So today we have in studio, we have someone very special. Her name is Pastor Debbie, and we have so much in store for you, listeners. So I'm going to introduce Pastor Debbie. Hi, Pastor Debbie.
Hi, Jade. How are you?
I am doing well, and how are you?
I am doing great. I am so excited to be here. Wow, wow, wow. Amazing.
Yeah, we're going to ask that you just introduce yourself to the persons listening to this podcast.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Wherever you are, wherever your neck of the woods is, I just give thanks for you and I just welcome you. My name is Pastor Debbie, and I have served in full time ministry for over 14 years. I've been a pastor for 3 years, and I've been a Christian for about 21 years now. Yes. And I must say, I just really love the Lord and just think, it's such a privilege to be able to serve God's people. And so, yeah, I have really been committed to serving God's people and just encouraging them to be the best that God has called them to be. Yes.
Interesting. Very good to hear. All right. So the first question that we're going to speak about is what are the churches telling their congregation in this pandemic?
Oh, wow, Jade. I tell you, the churches have been doing a lot, I think, during this global pandemic. I know initially when it started, persons were so afraid, and not just members in the church, but persons in the community on a whole. And
Mm,
from even some of those who I spoke to at the get-go when we heard that, it's a global pandemic, persons were so afraid, had to be just encouraging them to be strong and to just know that God is in charge. And so the churches have been just encouraging their congregation to believe in God, to trust in Him, and not to lose faith. It's
mm,
easy when the unexpected happen to really lose faith or just become afraid. And so I know many church leaders have just been encouraging their people to be strong, also to keep safe, to take the necessary precautions. Yes, we stand in faith. And I mean, the Bible tells us faith without works is
is
dead.
dead.
And so
Mm-hmm.
we can't just be carefree and just go ahead. Yes, we have faith, but we have to put in the work as well. And that's important. So I do believe that the churches have been telling their congregation just to take the necessary precautions, be wise. Don't just put yourself out there and put yourself at risk. So much have been happening. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, is the church responsible to take care of their congregation during this pandemic? As in, is the church responsible to make sure that their congregation has food, that their congregation is safe, has a safe place to stay at, has masks, has the necessary things that are needed? Because during this time, everybody is looking to get hand sanitizers or masks. Is the church fully responsible for that?
I would say responsibility or being responsible, yes. Um, Even though the church has a level of responsibility for its members, the individuals as well has their responsibility. So you don't just want to just leave it okay on the church and the church should be doing this alone, but it's a combined effort. So the leaders of the church working with the congregation, for those, you sometimes you have those who are vulnerable or those who are in a less in terms of especially financial position. And so the church is responsible to really help these persons, the less fortunate, and sometimes, just to go out of its way to make sure its members are safe, to call them, to check upon them, to make sure they're safe. And so I do believe there's a level of responsibility there on the side of the church in making sure that their members are safe during this
Mhm.
pandemic.
During
And I
this pandemic.
mean, if the churches can source masks and hand sanitizers and those kind of things, they should go out of their way, I do believe, to make sure that their members are safe and that they are protected. And so, yeah, there's a level of responsibility, and we won't just leave the responsibility solely on the church, but it's a combined effort, So I do believe that both the leaders of the church, or the church working with its members to make sure they are safe, making sure they have the necessary supplies. You have some churches that have the elderly, the most vulnerable groups. I mean, that this pandemic, we have been told, that has been affected, sorry. And so making sure they're okay, they're safe, that, I do believe that the church has a level of responsibility just to ensure that their members are doing well and taking the necessary precautions to keep safe.
Okay. All right. Before we move on, I'm just gonna let the listeners know that the in and out that you're hearing, it's the disruption with the internet. So we're having a little problem where internet is concerned. So if you hear in and out, that is it. All right. So Pastor Debbie, my take on it is, all right, I want to know, are the churches doing it? No. Because, all right, you made a good example of the church should call their members or whatever. Suppose a church has over 2,000 members, 1,000 members. Is it a duty to do so? I'm asking because I have said to persons, oh no, I don't hear a church call me. I attend church, and I don't see nobody calling me to say, "Hi, Jade. How are you in this time? Are you doing well? Are you keeping safe?" I don't have that. But I know if there's any other situation where we're gonna talk about after this, they call and they want to know if it is that, oh, we're able to do so and so, we're able to do this. So if it is that they want something done, I see that they're calling. But if it is just to check up on, to make sure that churches, persons that attend the church, they're okay, I don't see it being done. So is it that these things are being done now? Are they done now? I mean, you probably can't speak for all churches, but the church that you attend or the church that you pastor.
Oh, wow. Jade, I tell you, I know of churches that are doing it, even with large congregations, that, it might not necessarily only be from the pastor or the church leaders, but sometimes to manage, because if you have 1,000 or 2,000 persons, that would pose a challenge in terms of getting to everybody, but have cell leaders, have persons who are assigned to say, okay, I'm calling on behalf of the leadership of the church just to check on you, to see if you and the family are okay. I mean, I know of churches that are doing that, and even the church that I help to pastor, we have been doing that. I mean, reaching out, checking to make sure that members are okay. In a case where the pastors or even the bishop might not be able to reach to everybody, but other persons have been assigned to reach out to say, hey, we're checking up on you. I know for some, and I know right now, so many churches may have fallen short in regards to that in terms of reaching out. And I'm not just going to make an excuse right across the board to say, okay, fine, to justify why it's not done. But I know to some extent, so many persons have been so caught up with this global pandemic and what is happening and trying to keep safe. And so sometimes even just the thought of calling and checking up sometimes is overlooked. And so, I think as a matter of priority, that, the church, whether it is the pastor or somebody else is assigned to make these calls, it's very important. I mean, everybody wants to feel special. You want to know that, hey, this place that I am fellowshipping at cares about me. And sometimes it may not be a long call, to talk for 5 or 10 minutes, but just that even 1 minute to say, how are you doing? How is the family? We're just reaching out to say, hey, or to just find out, are you doing okay? And so I do believe it's important, but it's really sad that, as you said, you've not heard from the church that you attended. And so it's a little sad. But I sometimes we just want the attention to be on us, and we don't look on the other side of it, because sometimes we could reach out, or members, I find, sometimes don't reach out. This global pandemic is happening. You may be waiting, okay, fine, I'm waiting to hear from my church, but if you should flip it again, have you called to check up on your leadership as well? Because most
To
time
find out if they're doing good.
we want the attention to be on us. And I
Yeah.
was
But
saying it's
but
surprising
for
that
me,
you did ask this, because the other day I said to someone, I said most times or sometimes members of the churches don't think their pastors or their leaders need to be checked upon. And when I said it to the person said, "Whoa, I never thought of it. I mean, what is the pastor? Pastor don't want anybody to check on them, to check if they're okay." And I said, "Whoa, look at it. The members would want to be checked upon, but sometimes they don't even call to check to see how the pastor is doing.
hmm
Because
I
they think, okay,
agree. I agree. That's that's a question that I have coming up also where that is concerned. But in terms of art, so the thing is, all right. So my take on, and I'm gonna ask you what your take on. All right, so I see that the churches are asking for the tithes and the offerings during this time of pandemic. I am let me tell you, I have two sides to this because I have been on this side where my parents are bishops, and I've been on the side now of I just attend a church, right?
yes,
So I've been on both sides. I'm understanding it in two different ways. I sort of find it offensive because, as I said before, the churches won't call to
yes,
check up. They won't call to check up, but they'll call if they need something done. Oh, we need something done. Can you help us? So during the time that you're calling me to get something done, you don't
yes.
think you can also ask me, how am I doing? While you're
Oh,
asking me to get something done, that's where my thing is.
yes,
And my thing is, after you will be asking, oh, we need you to contribute to this, we need you to contribute to that. Suppose me, myself, don't have any money to even take care of myself, but you
yes,
are wanting me to contribute to something without even asking my position on it. Where am I? What is happening? Can I help? Can I provide? But you're expecting no, even though we're going through this pandemic,
yes,
we are supposed to still be giving your tithes and offerings. Suppose if I have a family, the money
yes.
that I have for the tithes and offerings, remember that many people now don't have jobs because of this. So
That's true.
whatever little money that they had saved up or whatever, nobody is thinking about giving the church at this time. We're thinking of ensuring that we're taken care of, because the truth is we don't know when this is gonna end. We hope it ends tonight, but we are not quite sure when it is going to end. And if it is that we give our money to the churches, then how do we survive? On the other hand, the
Mhm.
churches also need to keep open. I mean, if it is that tithes and offerings are not being given to the churches, how are the pastors being paid? How is the light bill being paid? People will say, oh, but churches shouldn't be open right now because they
Yeah.
should be doing online streaming at this time to prevent people from coming in contact with other people and getting um, this whole habalaloo. And I'm
Wow.
thinking, I'm saying, the churches still need, the rent needs to be paid, or the mortgage on the church still needs to be paid, because at the end of the day, no one cares if there's a pandemic. They want their money also because they also need their funds to take care of themselves.
Yes.
So I'm looking at it in both ways and saying, yeah, everybody need to get, I don't know how to solve this, but I'm hoping that
Yes.
you can help us to solve this.
All right. It's a very sensitive issue. It's always sometimes a very touchy issue when you talk about tithing or tithes and offering. It You did mention and you did say, okay, fine. If I'm going to the church and you're not calling to check on me, but every time there is a need, you're reaching out to me to take care of that need. I think that's a little selfish. It can't just be one-sided. It must be a relationship in terms of with the membership and the church. I mean, you have persons who will go out of their way and do anything for their church
Mm-hmm.
because of the kind of relationship that they have with not just the leadership but the church on a whole. And the church is not necessarily, when we talk about the church, we're not just talking about the building that we go and fellowship at. We're
Right.
talking about the overall, the membership, the leaders, because we are the temples of
Mm-hmm.
the Most High. So you find that tithing becomes such a kind of touchy issue. If it's that the church is not caring, it is going to become like a burden. If it's that you're only calling, and take it out of the scope of the church. If you're in a relationship with someone and all you're doing is taking and you're not willing to give anything, you're going to have a problem.
Mm-hmm. It's a
And so
parasitic
I
relationship.
believe if the leaders and the members are not reaching out and caring for each other, it's going to become a burden. It's going to be as if I'm just being used. It's only when you want something from me that you are reaching out to me. And so that's a little distasteful, I believe. And so if it's a case where, you mentioned about in this global pandemic right now, some persons are not working, and it would be really hard to be asking. Usually your tithe is paid from your work. So when persons talk about tithing and offering, it's in the scriptures to give unto the Lord, to
Mm-hmm.
give your tithe. He says, bring your tithe and your offering so that there may be meat in my house. And so it is not, that is just the pastor who is saying that you must bring the tithe. And God tells us that the tithing, when you give your when you give your tithing unto God, it's like an offering you're giving unto Him. And I think it's in the book of Malachi where he speaks about the tithing, that you should bring it so
Mm-hmm.
that there is meat and food in His house. And then He said, "Prove me, God, not the pastor, not prove the pastor, or prove the church. Prove me, God, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing."
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe the tithing is also a safeguard against the hand of the enemy. It acts as a weapon against the enemy. And so sometimes you find, and surprisingly, the principle of the tithing, persons who are sometimes not Christians, they religiously tithe because they say, listen to me, the principle of this thing works. They say the principle of this thing works.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they pay their tithe, sometimes as they get their salary, the tithe comes out first. And I'm talking about those who are not Christians here.
I
Their
know.
tithe comes out and they pay, and they are seeing the blessings, the principles of it, where it works for unbelievers and it works for believers if you're willing to work it. But during this time of global pandemic, it's not, if it is a case that, you're getting your salary, and we know the challenges right now. And so I don't think that, the pastors should be pressuring their members right now. I know it's hard, and you did mention about, the light and the church needs to be open, and so many things are interconnected. And so we have to, and I mean, as a Christian, we're led by the Holy Spirit, or we should be led by the Holy Spirit. And so I do believe that God is a merciful God. And if we put our trust in Him, He is faithful to take care of us. And that's what I believe. If we can say, okay, God, I've received this as my salary, and I'm going to be faithful to bring this 1/10 as you have asked of me. And I'm going to trust you to take care of me. So you go back to your relationship with your Heavenly Father. Because you're saying, okay, God, my sustenance is not in the amount of money I am getting. And most times we get the lines crossed. Our hope is in God. Our trust is in Him. And so, sometimes, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, when you get your salary, and sometimes if you don't sometimes take out that tithe, and you're not faithful, sometimes you wonder where the money
You want to
goes.
finish faster.
And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
if you are faithful and you put it in God's hand, you say, God, I am trusting you. Sometimes you wonder, you go through the month and you're saying, but wait, oh my goodness, I still have money left. And so the principle works if we're willing to work it. Some persons don't believe in tithing, but we have to encourage them that, listen, you're not doing it to man, it's God you're doing it unto, as an offering unto the Most High. And so it go back to our relationship with God, the relationship with the church that we attend. And it just can't be you're always calling to get from me, and then in turn, you're not showing me, you're not appreciating me, you're not reaching out to me. I'm in the church, but I don't even feel like a part of the church. And so it's really sensitive, Jade, and just the thought of it, that different churches and some of the pastors forthrightly come out and say, bring. I mean, I remember I was watching one of those news channels, and there was I think they were interviewing a pastor, and he was saying there was some return check that the government was giving out, and they're saying, bring your check, give over your check to church. And I'm saying, no, no, no,
Mm-mm.
no, the people are not obligated to bring their check from the government.
As a
I'm
stimulus check.
saying,
Mm-hmm.
bring your check from the government. I don't agree with that. I don't. And some pastors may tell you, well, I don't agree with you. Whatever, bring. Some will say bring the whole check, and I think that's unfair because the people need to survive, as you said. But if you want to give, for example, your salary, you get a salary or a gift, and you say, okay, fine, God, I'm gonna pay my tithe out of this, and you do it by faith. It's by faith. The scripture says, whatever is not of faith, I think, is sin.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever it is that we come to do, we do it in faith, trusting God that He will take charge and He will take care. And He always does.
He always does. He always does. All right, I'm gonna take a minute break, and we're gonna come right back after this. Welcome back to Unfiltered. We have been speaking so much about the church and their view, or how they see this pandemic, and what is the procedures, what is it that they're telling their congregation, and what are the views on how the tithes and offering should go. I'm going to say that I must put out there, I'm a Christian and I believe in paying my tithes. I have seen the benefit of it, where, as in, I have paid my tithes before. I pay my tithes because I see what God does when I pay it. And as you
Wow.
said before, when you pay your tithes, you automatically, for some reason, you don't lack. When you don't pay your tithing, you don't know
Oh
where the
my
money
God.
gone. You don't know what happened. You don't know nothing. And I'm saying,
Oh
what
my
is happening? I have experienced it so much.
Yeah.
But my thing to it is, at this time, if it is that I am not feeling, and as I said, in a relationship, if it is that you're not feeling comfortable in a relationship, you're not going to want to do anything that
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not going to want to do anything in that relationship. And if I don't feel comfortable in the church because I'm not being looked at, I mean, if it's a church with 10 people, and
Yeah.
and I'm not saying I want the pastor to call me, but I'm just saying, as we said earlier, just asking to do things instead of just checking up sometimes. I mean, because when they ask to do
Yes.
things, things are done. So also check up to ensure, hey, hope you're doing good, whatever, whatever. I mean, persons will feel good. As I say, everybody wants to feel good. Everybody likes to feel good,
Yeah. Yeah.
regardless
That's
of
so
whatever
important.
situation. So the next thing that we want to ask is, well, for me, I personally believe that this pandemic is just the beginning of the end times. I believe in the end times and what's going to happen. And reading in Revelations, I'm seeing about the pandemic in terms of we're having diseases and sicknesses and deaths and all sorts of things taking place. I I believe that this is just the beginning. There are so many things that are yet to come. I don't know. What is your take on it?
Jade, I do believe that as well, that these are the last days we're living in. And not just with the pandemic, no, but you see the hearts of men have become so cold, so callous. And so you just by even some of the things you see happening, you just know that it just can't be natural. It must be the end times.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do believe, as you said, that we, even with this global pandemic, that we are in the last days.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are more things to come. And the Bible tells us that some of these things will come, but he said, look up, or redemption draw nigh.
Mm-hmm.
So we know, and we expect, I mean, as Christians, we don't live, or we shouldn't live in this life as if it's our final place. I always tell persons, listen, my hope is not resting here in this life. I am looking for that time when, whether the Lord should call me home, or the rapture should take place, that I'm looking for my eternal home.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see some of the things happening in this time, I just lift my faith and I say, God, I am just trusting you that you are able to keep us as your children during this time.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible tells us that the days will also be shortened. Jade, if I don't know what else we need to see. The other day I said, it seems as if Tuesday is missing from the week. I know Monday came, then I know we're at Wednesday, and then we're at Thursday and Friday. And I would sometimes ponder it. I said, did we have Tuesday? It seems like a day is missing because the time is going so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the word of God tells us, Jade, that because of us, the believers, the elect, the Most High will shorten the days. And you see it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wonder, where did the time go? It is still same 24 hours, same amount of minutes and seconds, but it just seems like something is happening. So I do believe we're in the end times. And as you said, more and even worse things are going to come. But we have a hope. We have a hope in God that comes what may. I think there's a song that says we have an anchor that keeps the soul steadfast and sure while the billows roll. It is fastened to the rock that cannot be moved, grounded firm and deep in the Savior's love. And so that's our hope, even in these end times. After Corona, there's so many prophecies that other things worse than Corona will come. We are still not going to be moved. We're still going to hold our ground in God and trust him that he's able to keep us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna let the listeners know, for those out there, if it is that you're hearing the ins and outs, it's because of the internet disruption that we're having. We're having some internet issues. Just letting you know. All right. So I want to know, what is your view on the domestic violence and the church's response to it? Because at this time we have people staying at home now more often. People have to be staying at home with persons who abuse them. And I'm only talking about adults, because you have women who are being abused, you have men who are being abused, and you have children who are being abused. So even for domestic violence in itself, what is the church's response to it? Is it that you you can't know generally if persons are being abused unless probably they're saying something or you see signs. But in this time when you're not seeing people, you're probably just having Facebook Live, or you're probably just calling people, but you're not seeing persons. What is the response to it if persons even call to say, hey, my partner is beating me? Would it be a man or would it be a female? What is the church's response to this?
Wow. Oh my goodness. The abuse in any shape and form should not be tolerated. The church's response, most times you don't know, as you said, if it's not revealed to you, if you don't see the signs, if you don't, sometimes God reveals it and in your spirit as a pastor or a leader of the congregation. And sometimes when you talk to the persons, then you will say, you get an idea that, hey, this is happening. It should not be tolerated. And once the church or the leadership knows that it is happening, it is important for the church to intervene. Most times we keep quiet. As you said, it's not just the man alone abusing the woman. You have cases where the woman is the abuser and the man, because there's a certain stigma that you're a man, you should be tough. You shouldn't, be complaining about abuse, but it does happen. And so churches, once they know that it is happening, should intervene, talk with the couple. um if it's a case you find that where it's getting out of hand, you call the police, whatever it is, to rescue the lives, because most times it ends in the death of a partner or the death of both partners.
Mm-hmm.
And so the church must be more in terms of adamant, in terms of intervening, or be more responsive once they become aware that it is happening, to really intervene and to really, offer even more counseling to those who may have gone through, because you have some persons who have gone through abuse and they're still suffering. And you find that sometimes they act out, and
Mm-hmm.
that is the source. You have the children as well, who sometimes are the ones who are mostly affected, whether it is verbal or physical or sexual abuse. You have it in different shape and forms. And I believe once the leadership of the church knows, they must intervene. If it means calling, we have different social organizations that do work with children, that
Mm-hmm.
do intervene, reach out. You have women's affair organization, and even who also not deals with women alone, but for the men who are being abused. So, I do believe that the church should be responsive to it when they know of it, to intervene,
Mm-hmm.
and to to make sure that they're actually on top of it. Sometimes persons suffer for years, and the church doesn't know. And if they don't see maybe like a black eye or some kind of, you suspect in certain ways that, hey, something is not right,
Mm-hmm.
then the church's response should be to intervene and to just make sure that their members are keeping safe,
Mm-hmm.
are really keeping safe. And sometimes it's not only sometimes the different forms of abuse, persons respond differently to it. Some persons go into depression, and some are not willing to tell you, hey, I'm being abused. And so once as a leader, intervene. Don't leave it, because most times it ends up with a body going to the morgue. And the children, and if we should spend time, most times we don't listen to the children or what they're saying, but sometimes it comes out and sometimes
Yep.
it's ignored. Let us be more responsive and take care. Sometimes we can become so busy, Jade,
Mm-hmm.
with what
Yep.
is going on,
Mm-hmm.
that we miss the true essentials of life. And
Yep.
even as a church, sometimes we become so busy with everything else that we miss some things. So we have to really pause, take some time, recalibrate, check, and how we move forward is important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's such a heavy topic sometimes to speak about, because in this time there's so much and no more that you can do, because persons sometimes they don't even want to be in contact now because everybody's afraid of being around persons. So it's
Yeah.
difficult, but I'm gonna encourage you listeners out there, those persons who may be going through things, who may be going
Yes.
through abuse, who there are so many things that you could be going through at this time, depression, loneliness. It can be working on
Yes.
your mental health, because being in a house, four walls, looking at it every day, it's not pretty. It's not pretty all the time. And some people don't even have people to talk with them. So
Talk.
I'm
Wow.
just encouraging you listeners out there to find someone to speak to, find a church to call, find a counselor. There are persons who do what is it called? Internet counseling. There are persons,
You have you
like
have helplines. You have helplines
that.
that you can call, and
Right.
just to talk.
So see,
Sometimes it becomes so heavy. The
mm-hmm.
burden of it is heavy.
It's a heavy, but find a way to reach out and get help. Just get help where you need to get help. So we're almost done with this. Um, I do apologize again, listeners, for the in and out of the internet. I mean, it's a lot of crazy stuff are happening, but we must press on. We must move on. Well, don't let
Yes,
internet issues stop us from doing what we're supposed to do. So
I
before
do
we go, I even
agree.
want to ask you, Pastor Debbie, how are you doing in this?
I must say I'm doing well, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful to God for, and I've, it's a choice I have made personally to be thankful in all things. And even I found myself the other day giving God thanks for even this global pandemic. I said, Lord, if you have allowed this to access us in 2020, it means that there is a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Lord, I don't want to miss the purpose that is behind this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to miss the purpose, because if I do believe in every opposition, an opportunity lies behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
I do see this global pandemic as what you would want to call an opposition, a challenge. And so I do believe that there is an opportunity that can come out of this if we choose to see it as an opportunity. So I'm giving thanks. I'm trusting God in the midst of everything. And I am just believing that no weapon formed against us as God's people shall prosper, that God will preserve us as his people. And so, yeah, right now I am just trusting and lifting my faith and taking the necessary precautions, because we have to be wise. Ha- We have to be wise. And so I'm taking the necessary precautions. And so, yes, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. And I hope you are doing well and keeping safe.
Yes, I am. I am doing well and keeping safe and staying inside. Not going out for me unless it's necessary. I was saying, I was making a joke and said to someone, you know, I'm happy that I'm happy that during this time I'm happy for the pandemic because I get to know myself better. Because I keep on saying, if it is that you're in this pandemic and not being able to know yourself and do some introspection and change who you are for the better, the pandemic made no sense really. You stayed home for naught, and that is just how I have seen it. But I mean, I'm doing good. I have also made a choice, as I said. I've made a choice to be happy in this. I've made a choice to make the best out of this. Yeah, and we just leave everything in God's hand. That's it. That's it. So I want to just thank you again for coming, Pastor Debbie, and thank you to all the listeners. I want to thank everyone. We have finally gotten through the first episode of this, and we just appreciate everyone for listening. And definitely, again, we'll do this next week, Tuesday again.